Have you ever asked yourself if the red you see is the same red I see? It sounds like a silly philosophical question, but neuroscientists and physicists now know it's one of the most important questions about reality, because the answer is mind-blowing. We have no way of knowing. The dress debate of 2015 was scientific proof that two people can look at the exact same object and see entirely different colors. Today, we're going to explore why your brain creates color from scratch and how that changes everything we thought we knew about perception. The philosophical question that science can answer. Have you ever looked at a sunset with friends and wondered if they see the exact same colors you do? That orange-pink glow spreading across the sky might look completely different through someone else's eyes. This question has fascinated humans for thousands of years. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle pondered whether we could ever truly know if others experience colors as we do. What was once purely philosophical now has scientific dimensions. Modern neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and physics have given us remarkable insights into how color perception works. And what they found challenges everything we thought we knew about the world around us. Last summer, I was showing my nephew a rainbow after a storm. He pointed to a section and called it green, while I saw it as blue-green. It wasn't a disagreement about words. We were having fundamentally different visual experiences of the same phenomenon. This everyday moment captures the essence of our color perception dilemma. Most of us go through life assuming colors are fixed, objective properties of objects. The grass is green. The sky is blue. That stop sign is red. These feel like simple facts about the physical world. We act as if colors exist independently of us, just waiting to be seen. This common sense view turns out to be completely wrong. The counterintuitive truth is that colors don't actually exist in objects themselves. They aren't physical properties like weight, shape, or size. Instead, color is something your brain creates. It's more like an interpretation than a discovery. This is scientific fact based on what we now know about physics, biology, and neuroscience. Think about a red apple sitting on your kitchen counter. What makes it red? The conventional answer is that the apple contains something, a pigment or material, that is inherently red. But that's not how color works. Apple has physical properties that cause it to absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. Specifically, it absorbs most wavelengths except those in the range we perceive as red. But there's nothing inherently red about those wavelengths either. They're just electromagnetic radiation with particular frequencies. The redness happens in your brain. Your visual system detects these wavelengths and transforms them into the experience of color through an incredibly complex process. Your brain creates a sensation of red based on the patterns of light hitting your retina, your past experiences, the surrounding colors, and even your expectations. Consider this. If no conscious beings existed to perceive it, would a rose still be red? It would still reflect the same wavelengths of light, but without a brain to interpret those wavelengths as red, the quality of redness wouldn't exist. Color is a feature of perception. Science strongly suggests that the color red you see is different from the red others see. The specific quality of your red experience likely differs from mine in subtle or even dramatic ways. Various lines of evidence point to significant variations in how humans perceive color. Even among people with normal color vision, there are measurable differences in our eye structures that influence color perception. The ratio and sensitivity of different types of color receptors in our retinas vary from person to person. Some people have receptors with slightly shifted sensitivity to different wavelengths. These physical differences inevitably lead to variations in color experience. There's also strong evidence from people with atypical color vision. About 8% of men and 0.5% of women have some form of color blindness, where they struggle to distinguish between certain colors that look clearly different to others. Even more fascinating are people with tetrachromacy, mostly women who have 4 types of color receptors instead of the usual 3. Research suggests they may see millions of color distinctions invisible to the rest of us. Our brains also process color information differently based on our experiences, cultural background, and the languages we speak. Russian has separate basic terms for light blue goluboy and dark blue sini, while English uses modifiers for a single blue category. Research shows Russian speakers actually perceive these as more distinct categories than English speakers do. Your cultural and linguistic background literally shapes how you see color. The science of color perception reveals something profound. We each live in our own perceptual worlds. When you and I look at that sunset, we're having related but distinct experiences. We can agree on the names of colors and communicate about them effectively, but the inner experience, what philosophers call qualia, is unique to each person. To understand why color perception works this way, we need to look more closely at what's happening when light hits objects around us. The physics of light reveals why color isn't a fixed property, but a relationship between objects, light, and perceiving minds. When we understand the physics behind color, we begin to see why our perception of the world is both remarkably accurate in some ways and profoundly subjective in others. The physics of light, what color really is. What if I told you that nothing in the world is actually colored at all? That bright red strawberry on your kitchen counter? It's not actually red. The blue sky outside your window? Not blue. Even your favorite green shirt isn't actually green. I know this sounds impossible, but it's true. Color as we know it doesn't exist in the physical world. It's a creation of your brain. To understand this mind-bending concept, we need to look at what light actually is. When scientists talk about color, they're talking about electromagnetic radiation, a form of energy that travels in waves. This electromagnetic spectrum includes radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, gamma rays, and visible light. Visible light makes up only a tiny sliver of this spectrum, positioned between ultraviolet and infrared radiation. This visible portion is the only part our eyes can detect. The wavelength symphony. Within this narrow band of visibility, different wavelengths correspond to different colors. Think of it like a musical scale. Each wavelength plays a different note that our brain interprets as a distinct color. The longest wavelengths we can see appear red to us, measuring about 700 nanometers. The shortest visible wavelengths appear violet at around 400 nanometers. All the colors of the rainbow fall somewhere between these two extremes. Objects themselves don't possess color as an inherent property. What they have is a particular atomic and molecular structure that interacts with light in specific ways. Some wavelengths get absorbed, while others get reflected. The reflected wavelengths reach our eyes and create our experience of color. When white light, containing all visible wavelengths, hits it, the strawberry surface absorbs most wavelengths, particularly those in the blue-green range. It reflects wavelengths in the 600 to 700 nanometer range, which our brains interpret as red. The strawberry itself isn't red. It simply reflects wavelengths that our visual system processes as red while absorbing the rest. The dance of light and objects. This relationship between objects and light becomes clearer when we change the lighting conditions. Colors look different under fluorescent lighting compared to natural sunlight because different light sources emit different wavelength combinations. Sunlight provides a balanced mix of all visible wavelengths, white light. Artificial light sources often have distinctive profiles. Incandescent bulbs emit more wavelengths in the yellow-red range, making everything look warmer. Fluorescent lights might lack certain wavelengths, causing some colors to appear dull or altered. Imagine a red apple in a room illuminated only by pure green light. The apple would appear black or very dark because there are no red wavelengths in the light for it to reflect. The apple can only reflect wavelengths present in the illuminating light. The apple's physical properties remain unchanged, but our perception of its color transforms completely. Beyond simple reflection, photography enthusiasts understand this principle intimately. The golden hour before sunset creates warm tones because the atmosphere filters out more blue light, leaving a higher proportion of red and yellow wavelengths. The objects themselves remain unchanged, only the available light differs. Even more fascinating are structural colors, those created not by pigments but by physical structures that manipulate light. The shimmer of butterfly wings or the changing hues of soap bubbles come from microscopic structures that cause light wave interference. These structures selectively reflect specific wavelengths depending on the viewing angle, creating colors that shift as you move. Color in the mind. Here's the crucial insight. These wavelengths of light are not themselves colored. A 605 nanometer wavelength isn't inherently red. It's just energy traveling at a particular wavelength. The redness happens when your visual system detects this wavelength and transforms it into the experience of red. The wavelength itself is colorless. It's pure physics. The color exists only in your perception. This explains why different animals see colors differently. Bees can see ultraviolet patterns on flowers invisible to us. Many mammals see fewer colors than we do. The mantis shrimp has 16 different photoreceptor types compared to our 3. These animals experience entirely different color worlds, even though they're looking at the same physical objects reflecting identical wavelengths. If no conscious beings existed to perceive it, would a rose still be red? It would still reflect wavelengths around 650 nanometers, but without a visual system to interpret those wavelengths as red, the quality of redness wouldn't exist. The physics would remain, but the experience of color would not. Color is something our brains create, not something we discover in the world. Color is our brain's interpretation of light wavelengths, not a physical property. This raises a fascinating question. If colors are created by our brains based on wavelengths of light, how exactly does our visual system detect these different wavelengths? What happens between the moment light enters your eyes and the moment you experience the vivid world of color? The answer lies in the remarkable technology built into your eyes, the amazing technology in your eyes. Your eyes contain technology so advanced that scientists are still trying to fully understand how it works. Even with our most sophisticated cameras and sensors, we still can't replicate the incredible way your eyes capture and process color. Your visual system is essentially a biological marvel that transforms simple wavelengths of light into the rich, colorful world you experience every day. At the back of your eye sits a thin layer of tissue called the retina. Think of it as a biological movie screen where light is captured after passing through your pupil and lens. This living display contains specialized cells called photoreceptors that respond to light. These photoreceptors come in two main varieties, rods and cones. Rods handle vision in low light conditions but don't contribute much to color vision. Cones are your color specialists. They're concentrated in the center of your retina, particularly in a small depression called the fovea, which is responsible for your detailed central vision. What makes human vision special compared to most other mammals is the number of different cone types we possess. Most mammals have only 2 types of cones, giving them dichromatic vision. They see fewer colors than we do, similar to how a person with red-green colorblindness would experience the world. Dogs see primarily in blues and yellows, with reds and greens appearing as grayish shades. This explains why your dog might struggle to find that bright red ball in green grass. They genuinely can't see the color contrast that's obvious to you. Humans, along with other primates, typically have 3 types of cones, giving us trichromatic vision. This third cone type evolved in our primate ancestors, providing an evolutionary advantage in spotting colorful, ripe fruits among green foliage. This additional cone type expands the range of colors we can perceive, allowing us to distinguish millions of different color shades. Each cone type responds to different wavelength ranges of light. Scientists label these as S cones, short wavelengths, M cones, medium wavelengths, and L cones, long wavelengths. While commonly called blue, green, and red cones, their sensitivity actually overlaps considerably. S cones respond most strongly to blue-violet wavelengths around 420 to 440 nanometers. M cones peak in sensitivity around 534 to 545 nanometers in the green-yellow range. L cones are most sensitive to yellow-red wavelengths around 564 to 580 nanometers. At the molecular level, cones contain light-sensitive molecules called photopigments, composed of a protein called opsin combined with a form of vitamin A. When light strikes these photopigments, the retinal portion physically changes shape, like a microscopic light switch flipping. This shape change begins the transformation of light energy into electrical signals your brain can understand. This process, called phototransduction, is remarkably complex. The shape change triggers a cascade of chemical reactions within the cone cell, activating proteins that alter the electrical charge of the cell membrane. While modern digital cameras use pixels that simply count photons, your cones perform sophisticated biochemistry to convert light into neural signals, more like tiny chemistry labs than simple light detectors. The architecture of cone cells maximizes their light-catching capability. Their outer segments contain stacked membranous discs packed with photopigment molecules, creating an expanded surface area for capturing light, similar to how solar panels are designed to maximize energy collection. Individual cone types don't perceive specific colors on their own. Color perception emerges from activation patterns across all 3 cone types. When light enters your eye, it activates each cone type to different degrees. Yellow light, for example, strongly stimulates both L and M cones while activating S cones very little. Your brain interprets this pattern, strong L, strong M, weak S, as yellow. This ratio-based system explains how we perceive colors like purple, brown, or pink, even though there are no single wavelengths corresponding to these colors. Purple occurs when both rest cones blue and L cones red are stimulated, but M cones green are not something that doesn't happen with a single wavelength of light. The genetics behind these color sensing cells reveal another layer of complexity. The genes for red and green photopigments are located on the X chromosome, explaining why red-green color blindness affects about 8% of men but less than 1% of women. Women have two X chromosomes, providing a backup if one carries a mutation, while men have no such backup. After cones convert light into electrical signals, these signals travel through several layers of neurons before forming your optic nerve, a direct pathway to your brain. These signals contain no inherent color information. They're just patterns of electrical activity. Your brain transforms these electrical patterns into vivid colors. The signals travel to your visual cortex, where specialized neurons respond to particular cone activation patterns. Your brain actively constructs your color experience using these signals as raw material, turning simple wavelengths into the rich tapestry of colors that make up your visual world. Your brain, the ultimate color creator. What if I told you that color doesn't exist until your brain invents it? Everything you just learned about light wavelengths and specialized cells in your eyes is only the beginning of the story. The electrical signals from your retina are essentially just raw data. They contain no color at all. Color is something your brain creates from scratch. Think about those electrical signals traveling from your eyes. They zip along your optic nerve, a bundle of about 1 million nerve fibers connecting each eye to your brain. These signals aren't coded as red or blue. They're just patterns of electrical impulses, like binary code in a computer or unedited footage waiting to be transformed into a finished film. The magic of color perception happens when your brain interprets this code. When these signals reach your brain, they first arrive at a structure called the lateral geniculate nucleus, LGN, which acts like a relay station. From there, the information travels to the primary visual cortex, located at the very back of your brain in the occipital lobe. This journey transforms raw data into meaningful visual information. Scientists call this area V1, and it's where the first real processing of visual information begins. V1 doesn't process color directly. Instead, it breaks down the visual scene into basic components like edges, orientations, and contrasts. Think of it as identifying the outlines and boundaries of objects. This information is essential for recognizing shapes, but it still doesn't include what we think of as color. The signals then flow to other specialized areas of your visual cortex. One particularly important region is called V4, which specializes in color processing. When scientists study people with damage to Area 5-4, they find something remarkable. These individuals can see forms and movement perfectly well, but their world appears in shades of gray. This condition, called cerebral achromatopsia, provides strong evidence that color is created by specific brain regions. What's happening in V4 and other color processing areas is sophisticated processing comparing the relative activation of different cone types. For instance, a strong signal from L cones compared to M cones might indicate redness, while similar activation of L and M cones with little S cone activation might signify yellow. These comparisons happen automatically and outside your conscious awareness. Your brain actively constructs your color experience based on context, expectations, and past experiences. This is why color perception is about your brain making sense of wavelengths in relation to the entire visual scene. A perfect example of this active construction is color constancy. Have you noticed how a white piece of paper still looks white, whether you're viewing it in the yellow light of a sunset, the blue light of a clear sky, or artificial fluorescent bulbs? Physically, that paper reflects completely different wavelength combinations in each lighting condition. Yet your brain adjusts for these differences and perceives the paper as consistently white. Your brain accomplishes this by analyzing the entire visual scene and making assumptions about lighting conditions. It calculates the relationships between different surfaces and their reflected light, then adjusts your color perception to maintain consistency. This process is automatic, but without it, colors would change dramatically with every lighting shift, making the world confusingly unstable. This process creates a useful model of the world. Your brain prioritizes identifying objects consistently over accurately representing raw wavelengths. It's constructing a practical view of reality rather than a physically precise one. Your brain also fills in missing information and makes predictions about color. Consider what happens at the edges of your visual field where color sensitivity is reduced because there are fewer cones. Your brain doesn't show you a colorless periphery. It fills in what it expects based on the center of your vision and past experience. Languages across the world divide the color spectrum differently. Research shows that these linguistic categories influence how quickly you can distinguish between colors. People distinguish colors more readily when they cross a language boundary in their native language. For example, Russian speakers who have separate terms for light blue and dark blue can distinguish between these shades more quickly than English speakers who use a single category blue. Your cultural and linguistic background shapes how your brain processes color. The categories your language provides influence the comparisons your brain makes when constructing color perception. The brain's active role in constructing color explains why people perceive colors differently. Though most humans have the same basic visual system architecture, variations in cone cells create differences in color perception between individuals. Your experience of color isn't a direct window onto physical reality. It's a construction your brain creates to help you navigate the world. The redness of an apple or the blueness of the sky exists only in your mind as interpretations of wavelength data. This explains the famous 2015 dress debate when a photograph created widespread perceptual disagreement. Some people saw the dress as blue and black, while others saw white and gold. Both groups viewed identical pixels, but their brains constructed different color experiences based on different assumptions about lighting. This visible proof shows what neuroscientists have known for years. In February 2015, not a simple photograph of a dress posted on social media divided the internet in a way no one expected. What started as a casual wedding photo became a global phenomenon that sparked heated debates among friends, families, and even celebrities. The question seemed simple. Was the dress blue and black or white and gold? But the answer revealed something profound about human perception. You probably remember this viral moment. One person would look at the image and see a clearly blue and black dress. Someone sitting right next to them, looking at the exact same screen, would insist it was obviously white and gold. Arguments erupted everywhere, in homes, offices, and across social media platforms. People couldn't believe others were seeing something completely different from what seemed so obvious to them. Brain imaging studies confirmed that people were genuinely perceiving different colors when looking at the identical image. The photo had unintentionally created a perfect perceptual illusion that exposed how our brains construct color rather than simply detecting it. The original image showed a striped dress hanging against a partially washed out background. The lighting was ambiguous. Bright areas suggested either illumination or camera flash without clear visual information about the conditions. This ambiguity was key to why people saw such different colors. Remember color constancy? That's the brain's ability to perceive an object's true color regardless of lighting conditions. When you see a white piece of paper in yellow evening light, your brain compensates for the yellowish illumination and still perceives the paper as white. Your brain makes assumptions about the lighting and effectively subtracts it to determine what it believes are the actual colors. The dress photo contained ambiguous lighting cues that allowed two equally valid interpretations. Your brain had to decide, was this dress photographed in bright light or in shadow? Without enough contextual information, your brain made an assumption based on your past experiences and visual processing tendencies. If your brain assumed the dress was in shadow or dim blue light, it would compensate by mentally adding yellow. This adjustment would transform blue to white and black to gold. This happened for people who saw a white and gold dress. Their brains were unconsciously correcting for assumed bluish shadow light. Conversely, if your brain assumed bright yellowish light or camera flash overexposure, it would compensate by mentally adding blue. This would cause you to see blue and black, as your visual system corrected for perceived yellowish illumination. Neither interpretation was wrong. Both were valid ways for the brain to resolve an ambiguous visual stimulus. The dress itself was actually blue and black in reality, as confirmed by the manufacturer, but people who saw white and gold were experiencing a genuine perceptual difference based on how their brains interpreted the lighting conditions. Scientists found that past visual experiences might determine which interpretation your brain chooses. People with more exposure to natural daylight might assume the dress is in shadow, seeing white gold, while those with more exposure to artificial lighting might assume bright light conditions. Research suggests that night owls who experience more artificial light tend to see blue or black, while morning people often see white/gold. Individual physiology may also play a role. Differences in cone cells in your retina could influence which interpretation your brain favors. The dress illusion exploited a fundamental feature of our visual system. Color perception isn't a direct recording of wavelengths. It's a construction process where your brain uses context to infer colors under assumed lighting conditions. When those contextual cues are ambiguous, different brains reach different conclusions. What makes this phenomenon powerful is that it's not a conscious choice. You can't simply decide to see the dress differently. Your perception feels undeniably correct, illustrating how many perceptual processes happen automatically outside conscious control. Some people reported switching between seeing blue and black and white/gold, either spontaneously or through concentration. This demonstrates the brain's ability to reconsider its assumptions when actively trying to resolve ambiguity. But most people were locked into one interpretation and found it nearly impossible to see the alternative. The dress debate became a cultural phenomenon because it made visible a process that normally happens invisibly. Most of the time, our brains agree on basic perceptual experiences. The dress created a perfect storm of visual ambiguity that split people into distinct perceptual camps. This reveals that our experience of reality isn't a direct window onto the physical world. What we perceive is actually a model constructed by our brains based on sensory input combined with assumptions, past experiences, and expectations. The dress momentarily exposed the constructive nature of perception by creating a situation where different brains constructed fundamentally different models from identical input. The dress debate provided scientists with a natural experiment that revealed profound insights about human perception. It showed that people can literally see the world differently, not because they're being difficult, but because their brains create different yet equally valid interpretations of ambiguous information. This understanding challenges our assumptions about shared reality and raises fascinating questions about perception itself. When we recognize that our experience of color is constructed rather than detected, we begin to wonder what other aspects of our perceptual world might exist only in our minds. The shocking truth: we all live in different color worlds. What if I told you that we're all living in slightly different versions of reality? Right now, you and I could be looking at the exact same object yet experiencing completely different colors. This isn't science fiction, it's how human perception actually works. While we use the same color names to communicate with each other, the subjective experience of those colors varies from person to person in ways we're only beginning to understand. From the moment we're born, our color perception develops in unique ways. Our genetic makeup serves as the foundation. The genes for red and green photopigments are particularly variable since they're located on the X chromosome and share about 98% of their DNA sequence. These genetic variations create measurable differences in how people perceive colors, especially in the red-green range. Think of it like this. Each person's color perception is like their own personal playlist. The song's colors have the same names, but how they sound and appear varies based on your unique perceptual equipment. When you and your friend argue about whether a shirt is blue or purple, you might both be right. Your cone cells respond differently to those wavelengths.